Prologue. The silver wolf flower bloomed only under the light of a broken moon. I learned this at 7 years old, kneeling beside my mother's deathbed, as she pressed the delicate, luminescent petals into my small palm. Outside our cottage, storm clouds had torn the full moon into jagged crescents, and somehow, impossibly, the rare flower had chosen that moment to unfurl its ethereal beauty. "Promise me, Amara," Mother whispered, her voice barely audible above Layla's soft crying in the corner. "Promise you'll protect her. She carries a gift that will either save our people or destroy them." I didn't understand then. I was just a child, clutching a magical flower, while my 3-year-old sister sobbed for a mother who would never answer again. But I promised anyway, the way children do, with my whole heart, and no comprehension of the cost. 15 years later. I would remember that flower as I watched Alpha Kale kneel before my sister, his hand glowing with the ancient marking ritual that would bind them as mates. I would remember my promise, as Layla smiled with radiant joy, completely unaware that the power coursing through her veins was already beginning to kill her. And I would remember my mother's words, a gift that will either save our people or destroy them, as I felt something dark and powerful stirring in my own blood. Something I'd spent years burying beneath duty and unrequited love. The silver wolf flower in my pocket had turned black, the moment Kyle's mark touched my sister's skin. Some promises, I was about to learn, require more than a lifetime to keep. They require everything. Chapter 1, Strength and Shadows. The morning sun cut through the training ground like a blade, and Amara moved with deadly precision beneath its golden light. Her fist connected with the practice dummy. Wood splintered, straw exploded. The younger warriors stepped back, eyes wide with respect and maybe a little fear. Good. Fear kept them alive when real enemies came calling. "Again!" Amara's voice cracked across the clearing like a whip. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but she didn't slow down. Couldn't. Because every strike, every perfectly executed move was a silent declaration. I am worthy. I am strong. I belong here. The sound of approaching footsteps made her spine straighten. She knew that walk, the confident stride that made her pulse quicken despite herself. Impressive display. Kale's voice was like warm honey over steel. Amara turned slowly, meeting his amber gaze. Alpha eyes. Eyes that had haunted her dreams for years. Eyes that never looked at her the way she desperately wanted them to. "Just doing my job," she said, proud that her voice stayed steady. Something flickered across his face. Admiration? Longing? But before she could decipher it, his expression shuttered closed again. "The pack is strong because of warriors like you." His words were formal, distant, professional. Warriors like you. Not because of you. The distinction cut deeper than any blade. "Thank you, Alpha." The title tasted bitter on her tongue. For a heartbeat, they stood frozen, 2 people drowning in unspoken words. The air between them crackled with tension so thick she could barely breathe. Then Kyle stepped back. "Carry on." He walked away without looking back, and Amara watched him go. Just like she always did. Just like she always would. "You're staring again." Joran's gentle voice made her jump. Her best friend appeared beside her, concern written across his weathered face. He'd been watching her pine for their Alpha since they were teenagers, and he was the only one who dared call her out on it. "I don't stare." The lie rolled off her tongue easily. "Right." Joran's laugh held no humor. "And I'm the moon goddess herself." Amara grabbed her water bottle, hands trembling slightly. "He's our Alpha. I respect him." Respect doesn't make you look like someone just ripped your heart out. The truth hung between them like a sword ready to fall. Because Joran was right, watching Kale was slowly killing her, one stolen glance at a time. But what choice did she have? Love didn't ask permission. It just destroyed everything in its path. Chapter 2, Silver Flowers and Secrets. Later that evening, Amara found sanctuary in the one place that always soothed her wounded heart, beside Layla. Her sister sat by the fire, golden hair catching the flames like spun sunlight. Everything about Layla was soft where Amara was sharp, gentle where Amara was fierce. The perfect contrast that made Amara's chest ache with protective love. "The full moon festival is in 3 days," Layla whispered, her voice carrying dreams and hope. Amara's stomach clenched. The festival, where unmated wolves found their destined partners. Where Kale would finally choose his Luna. "Are you excited?" The question scraped her throat raw. Layla's eyes sparkled. What if he chooses me?" The world tilted sideways. He chooses me. Such innocent words. Such devastating hope. Amara forced her lips into a smile that felt like shattered glass. Any alpha would be lucky to have you. Because it was true. Layla was everything a Luna should be. Kind, nurturing, beloved by the pack. Everything Amara could never be. "I've dreamed about it," Layla continued, oblivious to the knife twisting in Amara's chest. Dancing under the moonlight, feeling the bond snap into place. "Stop." The word screamed in Amara's mind, but she bit her tongue until she tasted copper. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a delicate silver wolf flower, rare, precious, found only in the deepest parts of their territory. The petals seemed to glow with their own inner light. "For luck," Amara whispered, placing it gently in Layla's palm. Layla's gasp was pure joy. "Amara, how did you find one?" "I have my ways." The truth was, she'd spent hours searching the dangerous borderlands, driven by a desperate need to give Layla something beautiful, something that might ease the guilt eating her alive. Because while Layla dreamed of Kale, Amara dreamed of him too. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Layla cradled the flower like precious treasure. Not the most beautiful, Amara thought, watching her sister's face glow with happiness. "You are." That night, alone in her room, Amara stared at the carved symbol she'd made as a child, the Alpha bloodline crest. Her fingers had always been drawn to it, tracing the intricate lines without understanding why. Now she pressed her palm against the wood and felt something stir beneath her skin, something warm and electric and dangerous. Her hand trembled. What was happening to her?
Chapter 3. The Weight of Duty. Kyle stood before the Council of Elders, their ancient faces carved with expectations and barely concealed impatience. "The pack grows restless," Elder Thorn said, his voice like grinding stone. "You must choose a Luna, soon." The words hit like physical blows. Choose, as if love was something to be commanded, as if his heart was a tool for political gain. "The full moon festival," Kale began. "Will be perfect," Elder Mira interrupted. "The pack expects their alpha to find his mate under the sacred moon." Sacred. Right. Nothing about this felt sacred. It felt like a trap closing around his throat. "What of the prophecy?" Kale asked, grasping for any delay. The elders exchanged meaningful glances. Elder Thorn leaned forward, his eyes glittering with knowledge Kale didn't fully understand. "The healer's bloodline will save us all," Thorn quoted. "When the alpha claims his true mate, her power will awaken." Healer's bloodline. Layla. Sweet, gentle Layla, with her gift for mending wounds and soothing pain. The pack adored her, and she would make a perfect Luna. So why did the thought feel like swallowing poison? "Layla is suitable," Kyle said carefully. "More than suitable," Mira smiled. "She's destined." Destined. Another cage disguised as fate. As the meeting ended, Kale's mind wandered to someone else entirely. Someone with fire in her eyes and steel in her spine. Someone who made his wolf prowl restlessly beneath his skin. Amara. But Amara wasn't in the prophecy. Amara wasn't the healer the pack needed. Amara was Mine, his wolf whispered hungrily. Kyle slammed that thought into the darkest corner of his mind. He couldn't afford to want what he couldn't have. He was alpha. Duty came before desire. Always. But as he walked through the pack house, he caught Amara's scent lingering in the hallway, wild honey and storm clouds. His steps faltered. 3 days until the festival. 3 days until he bound himself to a woman his heart didn't choose. 3 days until he broke his own soul for the good of the pack. The full moon hung heavy in the sky above, watching like a silent judge as Kale prepared to sacrifice everything for duty. But deep in the shadows, something else watched too. Something that knew the prophecy held darker truths than the elders dared speak. Something that had been waiting 15 years for this moment. And it was almost time.
Chapter 4, Moonlight and Betrayal. 3 nights later, the full moon festival blazed across the pack grounds like captured starlight. Amara stood at the edge of the celebration, watching couples dance beneath paper lanterns that swayed in the evening breeze. The scent of roasted meat and honeyed wine filled the air, but all she could taste was the bitter copper of her own anxiety. Tonight. It would all end tonight. "You look beautiful." Jaren appeared beside her, offering a cup of wine that trembled slightly in his weathered hands. She'd chosen her dress carefully, deep forest green that brought out her eyes, silk that whispered against her skin, like a lover's touch. If Kale was going to destroy her heart, at least he'd remember what he was walking away from. "Thank you." The wine burned down her throat, but not enough to numb the ache in her chest. Across the clearing, Layla glowed like moonbeams made flesh. The silver wolf flower Amara had given her was tucked behind her ear, and she looked radiant. Perfect. Everything an alpha's mate should be. "Maybe he'll surprise you," Joran whispered. Amara's laugh cracked like breaking glass. Maybe. But she knew better. Hope was a luxury she couldn't afford, not when Layla's happiness hung in the balance. The drums began to beat, deep, primal, calling the unmated wolves forward for the sacred ceremony. Kale stepped onto the raised platform, and Amara's breath caught. He wore ceremonial black leather that molded to his powerful frame, silver clasps gleaming at his throat. Alpha incarnate, beautiful and untouchable as a god. His amber eyes swept the crowd and found hers. For one heartbeat, one impossible electric moment, the world disappeared. Just them. Just this connection that burned between them like wildfire. Then his gaze shifted to Layla, and Amara's heart shattered into 1,000 bleeding pieces. "Pack!" Kale's voice rang across the clearing. "Tonight, under the sacred moon, I choose my Luna." The crowd held its breath. Amara held hers too, drowning in the silence. Kale's hand began to glow with ancient power, the marking ritual that would bind souls for eternity. He stepped down from the platform, moving through the crowd like a predator stalking prey. "Please," Amara's heart whispered, "please look at me, choose me, love me." But he walked past her without a glance, stopped in front of Layla, knelt on one knee. "Layla Ashwood," his voice carried across the stunned silence. "Will you be my Luna?" Layla's gasp was pure joy, tears streaming down her face as she nodded. "Yes! Oh, yes!" Kyle pressed his glowing palm to her throat, and light exploded between them, silver and gold and blindingly beautiful, the mating bond snapping into place with cosmic finality. Amara watched her sister claim the life she'd dreamed of, and felt something die inside her chest. The silver wolf flower behind Layla's ear began to wither and turn black, but nobody else seemed to notice.
Chapter 5. The Weight of Wrong Choices. Dawn crept across the packlands like guilty fingers, and Kale stood at his office window staring at nothing. The marking was done. Layla was his Luna. The prophecy was fulfilled. So why did his wolf pace restlessly beneath his skin, snarling with frustrated rage? Wrong, it kept growling. All wrong. A soft knock interrupted his brooding. Come in. Layla entered carrying a breakfast tray, and Cale forced himself to smile. She looked pale this morning, dark circles shadowing her gentle eyes. You didn't eat last night, she said, setting the tray on his desk with hands that shook slightly. Thank you. He caught her wrist as she pulled away, frowning at how cold her skin felt. Are you all right? Just tired. But her smile wobbled at the edges. The marking, it was more intense than I expected. That was an understatement. The moment his power had touched her, something had gone wrong. The bond felt incomplete, fractured, like trying to connect two puzzle pieces that almost fit but not quite. The elders say it takes time to adjust, Cale offered, though doubt gnawed at his gut. Layla nodded, but her face was pinched with exhaustion. Cale, when I try to access the Luna power, it feels like it's fighting me. Is that normal? No, it definitely wasn't normal. I'll speak with Elder Thorn, he promised, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. After she left, Kyle sank into his chair and buried his face in his hands. 3 hours as a mated alpha, and already everything was falling apart. His office door slammed open without warning. We need to talk. Amara stormed in like a hurricane made flesh, fury radiating from every line of her body. Cale's wolf perked up instantly, recognizing its true mate. The scent of wild honey and storms filled the room, making his chest tight with longing. Amara. Don't. She held up a hand, stopping him cold. Just don't. I'm not here about us. I'm here about Layla. The professional mask slammed down over her features, but he could see the hurt lurking in her forest green eyes. Hurt he'd put there. What about Layla? She's sick. Amara's voice was flat, emotionless. Really sick. Whatever that marking did to her, it's draining her life force. Ice flooded Cale's veins. What are you talking about? Look at her, Cale. Really look. She's pale, exhausted, barely keeping upright, and it's getting worse by the hour. He wanted to deny it, but the evidence was right there. Layla's growing weakness, the fractured bond, the way the marking had felt. Wrong. The elders said. The elders lied. Amara's words hit like physical blows. Or they don't know the truth. Either way, my sister is dying, and you're the only one who can fix it. Your sister, not your Luna, not your mate. The distinction felt like salt in an open wound. What do you want me to do? For the first time since entering his office, Amara's composure cracked. Raw desperation bled through her warrior's facade. I don't know, she whispered. But we have to try something, because losing her voice broke. I can't lose her, Cale. She's all I have left. The words gutted him. Because they both knew the truth. He should have chosen Amara. His heart had known it, his wolf had known it, but duty had demanded otherwise. Now that choice might cost them everything.
Chapter 6. Cracks in the Foundation. That evening, Amara found Layla collapsed in the garden, silver wolf flowers scattered around her like fallen stars. Layla. She dropped to her knees, gathering her sister's limp form against her chest. Layla's skin was cold as winter, dark veins spreading like spider webs beneath her pale flesh. The marking on her throat pulsed weakly, more shadow than light. Can't breathe. Layla gasped, her voice barely a whisper. Terror clawed at Amara's throat. This was wrong. All wrong. The marking should have made Layla stronger, not this. I'm here, Amara whispered, stroking her sister's golden hair. I've got you. But even as she spoke the words, she could feel Layla slipping away. Whatever poison the marking had introduced was spreading, feeding on her sister's gentle spirit like a parasite. Amara. An ancient voice made her spin around. Elder Elda emerged from the shadows, her weathered face grave with knowledge that cut like broken glass. What's happening to her? Amara's voice cracked with desperation. Elda knelt beside them, her gnarled fingers hovering over Layla's marking. When she pulled back, her expression was haunted. "The bloodline curse," she whispered. "I should have seen it sooner." "What curse? Your mother never told you?" Elda's eyes held centuries of sorrow. The healer's gift comes with a price. When awakened through corrupted magic, it consumes the bearer from within. Amara's world tilted sideways. Corrupted magic? The marking ritual. It was tainted. Elda's voice dropped to barely audible. Someone wanted this to happen. Who? The word tore from Amara's throat like a battle cry. But before Elda could answer, footsteps crashed through the garden. Kale burst into view, his face a mask of panic and guilt. "I felt her pain through the bond," he gasped, dropping beside them. "What's wrong with her?" "Everything," Amara snarled, her protective instincts blazing to life. "Your precious marking is killing her." Kale's face went white. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Elda's ancient eyes pinned him with accusation. "Tell me, Alpha, did you perform the ritual exactly as the elders instructed?" "Of course Kale stopped, memory flickering across his features. There was something different. "Elder Thorn gave me a special preparation, said it would strengthen the bond." Elda cursed in the old tongue. "The fool, or perhaps not so foolish after all." "What are you saying?" "Someone wanted Layla marked with corrupted magic. Someone who knew what the bloodline curse would do." Amara felt ice flood her veins. "You think this was planned?" "I think," Elda said carefully, "that there are forces at work here older than any of us understand, and they're not finished yet." As if summoned by her words, a howl split the night air, long, mournful, and filled with ancient hunger. The sound made Amara's blood run cold, because it wasn't coming from inside their territory. It was coming from the borderlands, from something that had been waiting in the shadows for exactly this moment. Something that knew the curse had been awakened, and was coming to collect what it was owed. Chapter 7. Sparks and Shadows. Following the night's revelations, Amara found herself assigned to patrol duty with the one person she'd been avoiding. Kale moved through the forest like liquid shadow, his massive frame silent despite the dry leaves carpeting their path. The scent of pine and morning dew filled her nostrils, but underneath it lurked something else, his wild, masculine smell that made her wolf stir restlessly beneath her skin. 3 days since the marking. 3 days of watching Layla grow weaker while pretending everything was normal. The eastern border's been quiet. Kale's voice cut through the tension between them. "Good." She kept her eyes fixed ahead, refusing to look at him. Because looking meant remembering. Remembering the way his gaze had found hers during the ceremony, before destroying her completely. A branch snapped to their left. Both froze, senses flaring to life. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. But before he could answer, Kyle stumbled. His hand shot out to steady himself against a tree, and their fingers brushed. Lightning. Pure, electric fire shot up Amara's arm, making her gasp. Not the gentle warmth of pack bonds or friendship. This was raw power, primal and dangerous, crackling between them like a live wire. Kyle jerked back as if burned, his amber eyes wide with shock. What the hell was that? Amara stared at her tingling palm. The sensation lingered, warm and pulsing, spreading through her bloodstream like liquid heat. I don't know. But that was a lie. Deep down, in a place she'd buried beneath years of unrequited love and duty, she knew exactly what it was. The mating spark. The connection that should have bound them together under the full moon. "We should get back." Kale's voice sounded strangled. "Yeah." But neither of them moved. They stood frozen in the dappled sunlight, staring at each other with dawning horror, because what they'd just felt was impossible. Kyle was mated to Layla. The bond was sealed, witnessed by the entire pack. So why did touching Amara feel like coming home? A low growl echoed through the trees. Not from either of them. Something else. Something watching from the shadows with hungry eyes. "Move," Kyle commanded, and this time they both obeyed. But as they ran back toward Packlands, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had been lurking in those woods, it had been waiting for that exact moment. Waiting for them to discover what they should have known all along. And now it was too late to pretend otherwise. The real question was, what else was lurking in the darkness, and how long had it been planning this?
Chapter 8. Fractures in the Foundation. That afternoon, Kyle stood before his training warriors, but his mind wandered to forbidden territory. The feel of Amara's skin against his, the way electricity had danced between them like recognition. His wolf prowled restlessly, demanding he claim what belonged to him. "Focus," he commanded himself. "Your mate needs you." Again, he barked at the young wolves sparring in the ring. But even as he corrected their stances and demonstrated proper technique, part of him remained trapped in that forest moment. The rightness of Amara's touch, the way her forest green eyes had widened with the same shocked desire he'd felt. "Alpha," Joran approached cautiously. "Everything all right? You seem distracted?" Kyle forced his expression neutral. "Fine. Just concerned about Luna Layla's health." Joran's weathered face softened with sympathy. "She's resting. Amara's with her." Of course she was. Amara, fierce, protective Amara, would guard her sister with her life, even while her own heart was breaking, especially while her heart was breaking. "Sir," one of the younger warriors called out. "There's something strange happening." Kale turned to see Marcus, barely 18 and eager to prove himself, standing beside the practice dummy. The straw target was smoking, not from fire, but from some invisible force that had twisted its wooden frame into impossible angles. "What did you do?" Kyle demanded. "Nothing. I was just thinking about how angry I was at losing the last match, and then—" Marcus gestured helplessly at the destroyed dummy. Kale's blood chilled. Emotional manipulation of physical objects wasn't normal werewolf ability. It was something else entirely, something that whispered of bloodlines and ancient powers. "Has anyone else experienced unusual sensations lately?" he asked the assembled warriors. Uncomfortable glances were exchanged. Finally, a female warrior named Sarah raised her hand. "My herbs have been growing faster than they should," she admitted. "And yesterday, when I was really upset, all the flowers in my garden bloomed at once, even the winter roses." More murmurs, more admissions of strange occurrences. Kale's mind raced. If multiple pack members were manifesting unusual abilities, if the marking ceremony had somehow triggered dormant powers. "Dismissed," he said sharply. "All of you." As the warriors scattered, Kale remained rooted in place, staring at the destroyed dummy. Because suddenly, pieces were clicking together in a pattern that made his stomach turn. The prophecy, the bloodline curse, Amara's strange surge of power when their skin had touched. What if the elders had been wrong about everything? What if Layla wasn't the one mentioned in the prophecy at all? And what if whoever had orchestrated the corrupted marking ritual had been counting on that confusion from the very beginning?
Chapter 9. Dangerous Visitors. Meanwhile, Amara sat beside Layla's bed, watching her sister sleep fitfully. The dark veins had spread further up Layla's neck, creating an intricate web of shadow beneath her pale skin. Her breathing was shallow, labored, as if each breath required tremendous effort. "I'm so sorry," Amara whispered, stroking golden hair that had lost its luster. "This should never have happened to you." A knock interrupted her vigil. "Come in." But instead of Kale or one of the elders, a stranger stepped through the doorway. A woman with raven-black hair and eyes like winter storms, moving with predatory grace that set every instinct Amara possessed screaming danger. "Who are you?" Amara was on her feet instantly, placing herself between the intruder and Layla's vulnerable form. Someone who knew your mother. The woman's smile was sharp as broken glass. My name is Lyra, and I'm here to help. Amara's wolf snarled with recognition, not of the woman herself, but of the dark energy that clung to her like expensive perfume. Help with what? Your sister's condition. Lyra's gaze fixed on Layla with something that might have been pity. Poor thing, marked with corrupted magic, bound to the wrong alpha, dying by degrees. Such a waste of potential. How do you know about? Because I've seen it before. Lyra moved closer, and Amara caught her scent, roses and rain and something indefinably wrong. This particular curse has a very specific signature, and a very specific cure. What kind of cure? Lyra's smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp. The kind that requires sacrifice. The question is, how much are you willing to give up to save her? Before Amara could respond, footsteps thundered down the hallway. Kale burst into the room, took one look at Lyra, and went completely still. Lyra. His voice was flat, emotionless, but Amara caught the way his hands clenched into fists, the rigid tension in his powerful shoulders. Hello, darling? Lyra's tone turned mockingly sweet. Miss me? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Whatever history existed between Kale and this dangerous woman, it wasn't good. What are you doing here? He demanded, offering assistance to your mate. The word dripped with venom. Though we both know how that story ends, don't we? Amara's gaze darted between them, reading the undercurrents of old pain and bitter betrayal. This was more than just history. This was personal. Get out, Kyle growled. Now! But Lyra was already turning toward the door, her mission apparently complete. Think about my offer, Amara, she called over her shoulder, before it's too late to save anyone. And then she was gone, leaving behind only the lingering scent of roses and the terrible certainty that everything had just gotten infinitely more complicated. Chapter 10. Confrontation in the Shadows. Hours after Lyra's departure, Amara cornered Kale in his study, her blood boiling with questions that demanded answers. Who is she? The words came out sharper than broken glass. Kale stood with his back to her, staring out the window at storm clouds gathering overhead. His shoulders were rigid, every muscle coiled with tension that made the air crackle. Someone from my past. That's not an answer. Amara slammed the door behind her, making him flinch. Layla is dying, and some mysterious woman shows up claiming she can help? I need the truth, Kale. All of it. Slowly, he turned to face her. The haunted look in his amber eyes made her stomach clench with dread. Lyra was my mate, he said quietly. Before. The words hit like physical blows. Was. Past tense. But the pain bleeding through his carefully controlled expression told a different story. What happened? She betrayed me. Betrayed the pack. His hands clenched into fists. 3 years ago, she made a deal with our enemies, fed them information about our defenses, our weaknesses. People died because of her. Amara felt ice flood her veins. And now she's back, offering to help save Layla. Convenient timing. Too convenient. Kyle moved closer, and she caught his scent. Wild pine and masculine heat that made her wolf stir restlessly. Whatever game she's playing, we can't trust her. But even as he spoke, they both knew the terrible truth. Layla was fading fast, and Lyra might be their only hope. There's something else, Amara whispered. When you touched me in the forest, what we felt. Kale's eyes flashed with memory and desire. It shouldn't have happened. But it did. She stepped closer, drawn by forces beyond her control. The mating spark, Kale. Between us. How is that possible when you're bonded to Layla? I don't know. His voice was raw with anguish. But we can't... Can't what? The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Can't acknowledge that the moon goddess might have made a mistake? Can't admit that maybe the prophecy was wrong? The space between them crackled with electric tension. Every instinct screamed at her to close the distance, to claim what her soul recognized as hers. Instead, she forced herself to step back. "We need to focus on saving Layla," she said, hating how her voice shook. "Everything else, we'll deal with later." If there was a later. But as thunder rolled across the darkening sky, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that their time was running out faster than they realized. And somewhere in the shadows, Lyra was waiting to collect on debts they didn't even know they owed. The game was changing, but who was really playing it?
Male Piv. Chapter 11. Dark Revelations. That night, Elder Elda summoned Kale to the sacred grove where ancient secrets whispered through weathered stone. "The corruption runs deeper than we thought," she said without preamble, her gnarled fingers tracing symbols carved into moonlit rock. Kyle felt his wolf pace restlessly beneath his skin. "What do you mean?" "The marking ritual. It wasn't just tainted. It was deliberately designed to fail." Elda's ancient eyes held knowledge that burned like fire. Someone wanted Layla cursed, wanted her to suffer. Ice flooded Kale's veins. Who would do such a thing? Someone who knew about the true prophecy. Elda's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "The one the council has been hiding for generations." "What true prophecy?" Elda closed her eyes, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of centuries. "When shadow claims the healer's light, and false bonds break beneath the moon, the Alpha's heart will choose between duty's chains and passion's truth. But beware the price of love denied, for blood calls to blood, and power will either save or damn them all." Kale's world tilted sideways. "False bonds. The marking was never meant to succeed," Elda explained. "Layla isn't your true mate. She's the key to awakening something much more dangerous. Which is your real mate's power." Elda's gaze pierced him like a blade. "Amara carries the Alpha bloodline, Kale. Not just any Alpha, the original line, the one that ruled before the Great Division." The words hit like thunderbolts. Amara, fierce, protective Amara, was descended from the legendary Alpha Queen who had once united all werewolf clans under a single banner. That's impossible. She would have manifested dormant power, suppressed by trauma and unrequited love, Elda interrupted. But the marking ritual was designed to break those barriers. Layla's suffering is feeding Amara's awakening. Kale's hands shook with rage. Someone is using Layla's death to unlock Amara's abilities. And when that power fully manifests... Elda's voice trailed off ominously. "What?" "She'll be strong enough to challenge any Alpha for dominance, strong enough to reshape our world." The old woman's eyes glittered with ancient fear. "The question is, will she use that power to save us, or will it consume her?" A new scent drifted through the grove, roses and rain and something indefinably wrong. "Hello, darling." Lyra stepped from the shadows like a nightmare made flesh. "Did you miss me?" Kyle spun around, every muscle coiled for attack. "How did you find us?" "I've been watching, waiting." Her smile was razor sharp. "And now it's time to collect what I'm owed." Before either of them could react, she raised her hand, and Elda collapsed, ancient eyes rolling back as dark magic wrapped around her throat like a noose. "Stop!" Kale lunged forward, but invisible force slammed him backward into the stone altar. "The prophecy is already in motion," Lyra purred, "and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Soon Amara will have to choose, her sister's life, or embracing the darkness within herself." Her laughter echoed through the grove as she vanished like smoke, leaving only the lingering scent of roses and the terrible certainty that everything they thought they knew had been a lie.
Chapter 12. The Price of Power. Back at the pack house, Amara jolted awake from nightmares filled with silver fire and screaming winds. Something was wrong. Terribly, horribly wrong. She raced to Layla's room and found her sister convulsing, dark veins spreading across her skin like spilled ink. The marking on her throat pulsed erratically, more shadow than light. "Layla!" Amara gathered her sister's trembling form, feeling how cold her skin had become. "Can't breathe," Layla gasped, her usual golden glow flickering like a dying candle. "Something's coming." As if summoned by her words, the bedroom window exploded inward. Glass shards scattered across the floor as a massive shape burst through. Not wolf, not human, but something caught between both forms. Riven. He was larger than any werewolf she'd ever seen, his coat midnight black with silver streaks that seemed to absorb light. Red eyes burned with ancient hunger as they fixed on Layla's weakening form. "At last," he rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "The healer awakens the bloodline, just as prophesied." "Get away from her!" Amara snarled, placing herself between the intruder and her sister. Riven's laugh was like breaking bones. "You still don't understand, do you? She was never the prize." His burning gaze shifted to Amara. "You are." Before she could react, power exploded from her hands. Raw, silver energy that slammed into Riven's chest and sent him crashing through the opposite wall. Amara stared at her glowing palms in shock. "What the hell?" "The Alpha Queen bloodline stirs," Riven said, picking himself up from the rubble with inhuman grace. "Magnificent. But you're still weak, still bound by foolish sentiment." He lunged forward, claws extended. And Kale crashed into him like a force of nature, both males tumbling across the floor in a snarling mass of fur and fury. "Take Layla and run!" Kale roared, his clothes shredding as he began to shift. But Amara couldn't move. Because as she watched Kale and Riven tear each other apart, that strange power continued building inside her chest like liquid fire. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of it. She was hungry for more. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. But in the chaos of battle, none of them noticed the figure watching from the shadows. Lyra, her winter storm eyes gleaming with satisfaction as her carefully laid plans finally began to bear fruit. Soon, Amara would have to choose between saving her sister and embracing the darkness that promised unlimited power, and Lyra was betting she knew which path the desperate woman would take. Chapter 13. Forbidden Journeys. Following the devastating attack, Amara knew they had no choice but to venture into the cursed Shadowlands where forbidden herbs grew beneath poisonous moons. "This is madness," Joran whispered as their small group prepared for the dangerous trek. "The Shadowlands have claimed every wolf who's entered them." "Then we'll be the first to return," Amara replied, checking her weapons one final time. Layla could barely walk now. The curse was consuming her faster than ever, dark veins spreading like spiderwebs across her pale skin. Each breath seemed to cost her tremendous effort. "I can make it," Layla gasped, leaning heavily against Kale's strong arm. But they all knew she was lying. Time was running out like sand through their fingers. The Shadowlands stretched before them, a twisted landscape where trees grew black as midnight and flowers bloomed with sickly luminescence. The air itself felt wrong here, thick with ancient magic that made Amara's skin crawl. "Stay close," Kale commanded, his amber eyes scanning the tree line for threats. As they moved deeper into cursed territory, Amara felt something stirring beneath her skin. Power, raw and electric, responding to the dark energy surrounding them. "Amara," Kale's voice was tight with concern. "Your hands." She looked down and gasped. Silver light was bleeding from her palms, growing brighter with each step they took. "What's happening to me?" "The bloodline awakens in response to danger," Elder Elda had said before they left. "But be careful, child. Power without control is destruction incarnate." A branch snapped behind them. They spun around. Nothing. Just shadows and whispers. "We're being watched," Kale growled. his muscles coiling for attack. Before anyone could respond, Layla collapsed. Her body hit the ground like a broken doll, golden hair fanning around her ashen face. "Layla!" Amara dropped to her knees, gathering her sister's limp form. The marking on Layla's throat pulsed weakly, more shadow than light. Her breathing was so shallow it barely stirred her chest. "She's dying," Amara whispered, panic clawing at her throat. Without thinking, she pressed her glowing hands to Layla's chest. Power exploded between them. Silver fire poured from Amara's palms, wrapping around Layla like protective armor. For a moment, the dark veins receded and color returned to her sister's cheeks. But the effort left Amara drained, swaying on her knees as the world spun around her. "Incredible," a familiar voice purred from the shadows. Lyra stepped into view, her winter storm eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "You're learning to use it. Good." "Stay away from us," Kyle snarled, placing himself between Lyra and the sisters. "Oh, darling," Lyra laughed. "I'm not here to hurt them. I'm here to help." Her gaze fixed on Amara with predatory intensity. "Tell me, dear, how did it feel? The power flowing through you? The ability to heal with just a touch?" Amara's hands trembled, because the terrifying truth was, it had felt amazing, like coming alive for the first time. And that hunger for more power scared her more than any enemy ever could.
Chapter 14. Ambush in the dark hours later. As they searched for the lunar blossom that might save Layla, Kale's worst fears materialized from the cursed shadows. Riven emerged from the darkness like a nightmare given form, flanked by a pack of corrupted wolves whose eyes burned with unnatural fire. Their pelts were mottled black and silver, and they moved with the jerky, wrong movements of creatures touched by dark magic. "Did you really think you could hide from me in my own domain?" Riven's voice was like grinding stone. Kale shifted instantly, bones cracking and reshaping as his wolf form erupted through human skin. But even as his massive gray form faced down the enemy, he knew they were outmatched. "Take Layla and run," he growled to Amara. "I'm not leaving you. Go." The command was pure alpha authority. But before she could move, Riven's pack surrounded them. Glowing eyes, snapping jaws, the acrid smell of corruption filling the cursed air. The attack came swift and brutal. Kyle fought like a force of nature, claws and fangs tearing through enemy flesh. But for every corrupted wolf he brought down, 2 more seemed to take its place. Blood. Pain. The taste of his own mortality as razor-sharp claws found their mark. He was losing. "Enough!" Amara's voice rang across the battlefield, and power exploded from her like a silver bomb. The blast sent corrupted wolves flying through the air, their forms disintegrating before they hit the ground. Ancient trees bent away from the force of her rage, and the very air shimmered with unleashed energy. Kyle stared in awe and terror as the woman he loved became something far beyond human. Something magnificent and deadly and utterly alien. "Impossible," Riven breathed, his red eyes wide with shock. The Alpha Queen bloodline was supposed to be extinct. "Surprise," Amara snarled, silver fire dancing around her like living armor. But the effort had cost her. Blood trickled from her nose, and she swayed on her feet as exhaustion hit her like a physical blow. Riven's shock transformed into vicious delight. "Powerful but untrained. You'll burn yourself out before you can master it." He lunged forward, and Layla stepped between them. Weak, dying Layla raised trembling hands, and healing light poured from her palms. Not to attack, but to shield. To protect the sister who had always protected her. "No more," she whispered. "No more fighting." The curse that had been consuming her suddenly reversed, flowing backward through her veins and into the ground beneath their feet. Grass withered. Flowers died. But Layla grew stronger with each passing second. "What are you doing?" Amara gasped. "What I should have done from the beginning," Layla replied, her voice steady for the first time in days. "Taking control." Riven snarled and lunged again, but this time, when his claws met Layla's healing light, he screamed. The corruption in his blood reacted violently to her purified energy, and smoke rose from his flesh where they touched. "This isn't over," he howled, retreating into the shadows with what remained of his pack. But as silence fell over the cursed clearing, none of them noticed the figure watching from the tree line. Lyra smiled to herself, satisfied that her carefully laid plans were proceeding exactly as intended. Soon, the sisters would have no choice but to accept her help. And when they did, everything would change.
Chapter 15. Fractures and Choices. The journey back to Packlands felt like walking through quicksand, every step heavy with unspoken questions and dangerous truths. Layla walked under her own power now, the curse temporarily held at bay by whatever she'd done in the Shadowlands. But Amara could see the cost in her sister's eyes, a new hardness, an awareness of power that changed everything. "We need to talk," Kyle said as they reached the pack borders. "About what?" But Amara already knew, the power that had exploded from her, the way it had felt like coming home. "About what you're becoming." The words hung between them like a blade waiting to fall, because they both knew that whatever was happening to her, there would be no going back. They found privacy in Kyle's study, the familiar space now feeling charged with electric tension. Amara could smell his scent, wild pine and masculine heat, and it made her wolf prowl restlessly beneath her skin. "Tell me you felt it too," she whispered. "Felt what?" "The rightness. When our power touched in the forest, when we fought together against Riven." She moved closer, drawn by forces beyond her control. "Tell me you felt the connection." Kale's amber eyes blazed with memory and desire. "We can't do this, Amara. I'm mated to your sister." "Are you?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "Because that bond, it's wrong. Incomplete. You know it as well as I do." The space between them crackled with forbidden energy. Every instinct screamed at her to close the distance, to claim what her soul recognized as hers. "The prophecy was wrong," she interrupted, "or deliberately misinterpreted. Layla isn't your destined mate, Kale. I am." The words hung in the air like lightning waiting to strike. For a heartbeat, she thought he might deny it, might push her away and retreat behind duty and obligation. Instead, he stepped closer. "If we do this," his voice was rough with want and fear, "if we acknowledge what's between us, everything changes." Everything's already changed. Her hand lifted to touch his face, marveling at how perfectly her palm fit against his jaw. "The question is, are we brave enough to fight for what we want?" His eyes closed at her touch, and she felt the exact moment his resolve cracked, the exact second when desire won over duty. "Amara." Her name was a prayer on his lips, but before either of them could cross that final line, footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. They sprang apart just as the door opened, and Lyra walked in like she owned the place. "Sorry to interrupt," she purred, though her smile suggested she wasn't sorry at all. "But we have urgent business to discuss." Her winterstorm eyes gleamed with knowledge that made Amara's blood run cold. "You see?" Lyra continued, settling into a chair like a cat claiming territory. "I know exactly who cursed the marking ritual, and more importantly," her smile turned razor sharp, "I know why." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees as implications crashed over them like a tidal wave. Someone had wanted this to happen, had orchestrated every moment of pain and betrayal and awakening power. But who and what did they ultimately want? Chapter 16. When Hope Dies. Building on Lyra's devastating revelations, Amara found herself facing the impossible choice she'd always dreaded. Elder Thorn orchestrated everything, Lyra continued, her winter storm eyes gleaming with malicious satisfaction. The corrupted marking, the bloodline curse, even Riven's attacks, all designed to awaken your power. The words hit like physical blows. Elder Thorn, trusted advisor, keeper of ancient wisdom, had been playing them like chess pieces from the very beginning. Why? Kale's voice was raw with betrayal. Because the Alpha Queen bloodline threatened his control, Lyra purred. For generations, the Council has suppressed that power, ensuring no one could challenge their authority. But prophecies have a way of fulfilling themselves. Amara felt ice flood her veins. What prophecy? The real one. Lyra's smile was razor-sharp. When the Alpha Queen awakens, she'll either unite all packs under her banner or destroy them entirely. Thorn wanted to control which path you'd choose. And if I refuse to choose either? Then Layla dies. The words fell like hammer blows. The curse will consume her completely within hours, unless what? You embrace your full power. Accept what you are. Become the Alpha Queen your bloodline demands. Lyra's voice dropped to a whisper. But the transformation, it changes you. Forever. Through the window, Amara could see the blood moon rising, crimson and ominous against the darkening sky. Legend said that under such a moon, ancient magic reached its peak, and choices made could never be undone. There has to be another way, she whispered. There isn't. Lyra's tone held false sympathy. I've seen what happens when someone tries to fight their destiny. The power consumes them from within, leaving nothing but ash and regret. A scream split the night air. Layla. Amara raced toward her sister's room, terror clawing at her throat. She burst through the door to find Layla convulsing on the bed, dark veins spreading like spilled ink across her skin. Help her! Amara sobbed, dropping to her knees beside the bed. But even as she reached for her sister, she could feel it, the terrible hunger for power stirring beneath her skin, whispering that she could save Layla if she was willing to pay the price. The question was no longer whether she'd embrace her destiny. It was whether she'd have any humanity left when she did. Outside, the blood moon pulsed like a heartbeat, and in the shadows, ancient forces stirred to life. The transformation was beginning, whether Amara was ready or not. But in the darkness beyond her window, red eyes watched and waited, because Riven knew that desperate people made the most dangerous choices, and tonight desperation would reign supreme.
Chapter 17. The Alpha's Breaking Point. Simultaneously, Kale fought his own battle as pack members began turning against him in the chaos. You brought this curse upon us, Sira snarled, her followers backing her up with growls and bared teeth. Your failed marking has doomed us all. The great hall erupted in angry voices, accusations flying like arrows, loyalty cracking under the weight of fear. Kyle stood before his people, watching everything he'd built crumble into ash. The Luna grows weaker by the hour, another voice shouted. And you do nothing. I'm trying to... You chose wrong. The words came from Marcus, barely 18 but with eyes full of ancient rage. The prophecy was clear, but you let desire cloud your judgment. Kale's wolf snarled beneath his skin, demanding he assert dominance through force. But what was the point of ruling over ashes? Stand down, he commanded, but his voice lacked its usual authority. Because they were right. His choice had brought this destruction upon them all. Through the crowd, he caught sight of Joran, steady, loyal Joran, shaking his head with profound disappointment. Even you? Kyle asked quietly. I've watched you pine for Amara for years, Joran replied, his weathered face etched with sorrow. We all have, but duty comes first, Alpha. Always. The condemnation cut deeper than any blade. Because Joran spoke the truth that Kale had been running from. His feelings for Amara had compromised his judgment from the very beginning. A young warrior stepped forward, chest puffed with false bravado. Perhaps it's time for new leadership. Are you challenging me? Kale's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. The hall went silent. Challenging an Alpha meant a fight to the death, and despite their anger, none of them were truly ready for that consequence. I thought not, Kyle growled. But even as the immediate threat faded, he could see it in their eyes. Doubt. Fear. The slow erosion of respect that would eventually destroy his authority completely. Another scream echoed from Layla's room, and the crowd dispersed like smoke, leaving Kyle alone with the weight of his failures. He'd tried to balance duty and desire, and instead had achieved nothing but destruction. Outside, storm clouds gathered as if the very sky mourned what was coming. Lightning flickered in the distance, illuminating the packlands that might soon become a graveyard. Because somewhere in the growing darkness, Riven was marshalling his forces for a final assault. And this time, he wouldn't be content with just Layla or Amara. This time he wanted them all. The Alpha had failed his pack when they needed him most, and now everyone would pay the price for his weakness. But in the depths of his despair, Kale couldn't shake the feeling that this was exactly what someone had wanted all along. The question was, who had orchestrated their downfall so perfectly? And what did they ultimately hope to gain from the ashes of his pack?
Chapter 18. The Darkness Within. As the blood moon reached its zenith, Amara faced the choice that would define not just her fate, but the destiny of every werewolf alive. Layla lay dying in her arms, breath coming in shallow gasps that sounded like goodbye. The curse had spread to her heart now, dark veins pulsing in rhythm with her weakening pulse. "Let me help." Lyra stepped closer, her presence radiating dark energy. "I can show you how to harness your full power, how to become what you were born to be." "At what cost?" "Everything." Lyra's smile was coldly beautiful. "Your humanity, your ability to love, your connection to those who knew you before." She gestured toward Layla's still form. "But she'll live." The choice hung between them like a sword ready to fall. Save her sister by becoming a monster, or watch Layla die while remaining herself. "Choose quickly," Lyra whispered. "The blood moon won't wait, and neither will death." Through the window, Amara could see Riven's army gathering at the pack borders, corrupted wolves with glowing eyes and hungry fangs. They'd come for the final battle, drawn by the scent of approaching transformation. "Amara?" Layla's voice was barely a whisper. Don't sacrifice yourself for me." But how could she not? Layla was everything pure and good in this world, if saving her meant surrendering to darkness. Was that really such a terrible price? The thought terrified her, not because it was wrong, but because it felt so right. Power hummed beneath her skin, eager to be unleashed, promising strength beyond imagination, authority that could reshape the world according to her will. All she had to do was reach out and take it. "I can feel your hunger," Lyra purred, "the desire for control, for the strength to protect everyone you love. It's not weakness, Amara. It's evolution." Outside, howls split the night air as Riven's forces began their assault. The sounds of battle, snarls, screams, the clash of claws against claws, drifted through the darkness. Her pack was dying while she hesitated. Layla was dying while she wrestled with conscience. "Enough," she whispered. Power exploded from her like a silver star going nova. The walls of the room cracked under the pressure. Windows shattered into glittering fragments, and somewhere in the distance she heard Kyle roar her name. But when the light faded and the dust settled, Amara stood transformed. Her eyes blazed with silver fire. Her hair whipped around her face as if moved by invisible wind. And in her chest, where her heart had once been, something else pulsed, something ancient and hungry and utterly without mercy. She was the Alpha Queen now, and she was magnificent. But as she looked down at her sister, alive but forever changed by what she'd witnessed, Amara wondered if salvation bought with darkness could ever truly be called victory. The war was just beginning, and she was no longer sure which side she was fighting for.
Chapter 19. Unleashed Power. In the aftermath of her transformation, Amara stood in the wreckage of what had once been Layla's room, silver fire dancing around her like living armor. She could feel everything now, Every heartbeat in the pack house, every whispered prayer, every spike of terror as her people realized what she'd become. Alpha Queen. The words hummed through her veins like liquid lightning, carrying promises of unlimited power and the intoxicating rush of absolute dominance. Beautiful, Lyra breathed, circling her like a predator admiring its creation. You're everything the prophecies promised. But Amara barely heard her, because through the shattered window, she could see Riven's army pouring over the pack borders like a black tide of corruption and death. They'd come for her, come to claim the power she'd just awakened. Let them try. The thought came from somewhere dark and ancient, a part of her that felt no mercy, no hesitation, no fear. Amara? Layla's voice was barely a whisper. She turned to see her sister struggling to sit up, golden hair matted with sweat but alive, gloriously, impossibly alive. The curse had been broken when Amara accepted her true nature. I'm here, Amara said, but her voice carried new harmonics now, deeper, more commanding, the voice of someone born to rule. You saved me. Tears streamed down Layla's face. But what did it cost you? Everything. The word whispered through Amara's mind, but she pushed it away because dwelling on loss was weakness, and she could no longer afford weakness. A howl split the night. Riven, calling his pack to war. He's here, Lyra purred with dark satisfaction. Your first test as Alpha Queen. Through the broken window, Amara could see the battle beginning. Her pack now, fighting desperately against impossible odds. Warriors falling beneath corrupted claws, blood staining the earth she was born to protect. Power surged beneath her skin, demanding release. Stay with Layla, she commanded Lyra. Where are you going? Amara smiled, and it was a terrible thing to behold. To end this. She stepped through the shattered window frame and into the night, silver light erupting from her skin like controlled starfire. The air itself bent around her, responding to her will as if she were a force of nature given form. Below, Riven's army saw her coming and paused in their assault, red eyes wide with recognition and hunger. Their Alpha Queen had finally awakened. But as Amara descended toward the battlefield like an avenging angel, she felt something else stirring in the darkness, another presence, ancient and patient, that had been waiting for this moment for far longer than any of them realized. The real war was just beginning, and she was no longer entirely sure who the true enemy was. But it didn't matter, because she was done being anyone's pawn. Tonight, she would rewrite the rules of their world, or burn it all down in
Chapter
the trying.
20.
Unity in chaos. Simultaneously, Kyle fought alongside his warriors as silver light exploded across the battlefield above them. What the hell? Marcus ducked as debris rained down from Amara's transformation, but Kale knew. Deep in his bones, he knew what she'd become. The mate bond that should have connected him to Layla pulsed weakly, compared to the electric recognition that slammed through him as he looked up at Amara's transformed figure. Mine. His wolf snarled with possessive satisfaction. Finally. Alpha! Joran's shout snapped him back to the immediate danger. Corrupted wolves surrounded them, moving with the jerky, wrong movements of creatures touched by dark magic. Their eyes burned with unnatural fire, and their claws dripped with poison that hissed against the earth. Kyle shifted instantly, bones cracking and reshaping, as his massive gray wolf erupted through human skin. But even as he tore into enemy flesh, part of his attention remained fixed on the silver goddess descending from above. She landed in the center of the battlefield like a falling star. The impact created a crater 10 feet wide, and every corrupted wolf within 50 yards was blown backward by the sheer force of her power. Riven, her voice carried across the chaos, and even his name sounded like a death sentence on her lips. The enemy Alpha emerged from the tree line, larger and more terrifying than ever. His midnight coat rippled with unnatural shadows, and his red eyes burned with ancient hatred. Alpha Queen, he rumbled. At last we meet as equals. We are not equals, Amara replied, and silver fire danced around her fingers. You are a parasite. I am evolution. They clashed in the center of the battlefield, raw power against corrupted strength, silver light against consuming darkness. The very air around them crackled with conflicting energies. Kale watched in awe and terror as the woman he loved became something magnificent and terrible. Every move she made was fluid grace and deadly precision, power flowing through her like water through a broken dam. But he could also see the cost. The way her humanity flickered beneath the overwhelming force of her awakened bloodline. The cold calculation that had replaced her warm compassion. She was winning, but what would be left of her when the victory was complete? We need to help her, he growled to Joran. How? That's not our fight anymore. But it was. Because despite everything that had happened, despite the betrayals and mistakes and broken bonds, Amara was still his mate, still the other half of his soul, and he'd be damned if he let her face this transformation alone. Shifting back to human form, Kale sprinted toward the center of the battle, dodging bursts of silver fire and corrupted shadow. Amara! She turned at his voice, and for just a moment he saw her, really her, looking back at him through eyes that blazed with cosmic power. Kale. His name on her lips was part prayer, part warning. I'm with you, he said simply. Whatever you've become, I'm with you. And in that moment of connection, something shifted in the battle's tide. Because the Alpha Queen was powerful, but the Alpha Queen with her true mate at her side, she was unstoppable.
Chapter 21. The Trinity Forms. As the battle reached its crescendo, something unexpected happened that changed everything. Layla appeared at the edge of the crater, her healing light no longer the gentle glow it had once been. Now it blazed like concentrated moonbeams powerful enough to rival Amara's silver fire. "Sister," she called out, her voice carrying new authority. "You don't have to face this alone." Amara turned, shock flickering across her transformed features. "Layla, get back, it's not safe." "I'm exactly where I need to be." Layla stepped forward, and where her feet touched the battle-scarred earth, silver wolf flowers bloomed in perfect spirals. "The curse didn't just break when you transformed, it reversed, gave me back everything it had stolen and more." Riven snarled, red eyes darting between the sisters. "Two bloodline carriers? Impossible!" "Not two," Kale said, moving to stand between them. As his hands touched both sisters' shoulders, golden light erupted from the contact point. "Three." The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. The prophecy hadn't been about one destined mate. It had been about a trinity: Alpha, Healer, and the bridge between them. Kale's bloodline wasn't just any Alpha line. He carried the genetic memory of the original pack bonds, the ability to unite different supernatural energies into something greater than the sum of their parts. "The Trinity of old," Lyra whispered from somewhere in the chaos, her voice filled with awe and hunger. "I should have seen it sooner." Power flowed between the three of them, silver fire, healing light, and golden binding energy that wove them together in patterns older than recorded history. Riven's corrupted army began to falter, their unnatural forms unable to withstand the pure, unified force radiating from the Trinity. "This isn't over," Riven snarled, but his voice held the first note of uncertainty they'd ever heard from him. "Yes," Amara said, her power now flowing in perfect harmony with her sister's healing gift and Kale's binding strength. "It is." The combined force of their trinity struck Riven like divine judgment. Silver fire cleansed his corruption, healing light restored what had been twisted, and golden bonds anchored the transformation in reality. When the light faded, Riven stood before them, not the monster he'd become, but the Alpha he'd once been, proud, strong, and finally free of whatever darkness had claimed him. "How?" he gasped, staring at his restored hands. "Everyone deserves a second chance," Layla said softly. "Even enemies." But as the immediate threat ended, Amara felt something new stirring in the shadows beyond their light. something that had been waiting for this exact moment, when three bloodlines would unite and create power unlike anything the world had seen. The prophecy was complete. But prophecies, she was learning, had a way of cascading into new destinies. And somewhere in the darkness, ancient eyes watched their triumph with cold calculation, already planning the next move in a game that spanned centuries. The Trinity had awakened. But they weren't the only ones stirring in the supernatural world. And the real war? It hadn't even begun yet. Chapter 22. Following the Trinity's formation, Amara faced the true architect of their suffering as dawn broke over the transformed battlefield. Elder Thorn emerged from the shadows, but not as the frail old man they'd known. Power radiated from his form, dark energy that made the air itself recoil in disgust. Magnificent, he breathed, his ancient eyes fixed on the three of them. Everything I orchestrated has led to this moment. You... Amara's voice carried new harmonics of authority and rage. You caused all of this suffering. I created perfection. Thorn's smile was coldly beautiful. For centuries, I've guided supernatural evolution, weeding out weakness, cultivating strength. The Trinity is my greatest achievement. Kale stepped forward, golden light pulsing around his clenched fists. You destroyed lives, families, my pack. Your pack is stronger now, Thorn interrupted, purified by conflict, united by shared trauma. Evolution requires sacrifice. Layla's healing light flared brighter, flowers blooming at her feet despite the battle-scarred earth. You're insane. I'm visionary. Thorn raised his hands, and shadows deeper than midnight poured from his palms. But you've served your purpose. Now I'll harvest what I've cultivated. The attack came like liquid darkness, tendrils of void that sought to drain their newly awakened power. But the Trinity held. Silver fire met consuming shadow. Healing light pushed back corrupted energy. Golden bonds anchored them to reality itself. Impossible, Thorn snarled as his assault was turned aside. I am the architect. You are my creations. We were never yours, Amara replied, and her voice carried the weight of cosmic truth. The final battle erupted, not just physical combat, but a clash of fundamental philosophies. Order versus chaos. Evolution through suffering versus growth through love. Thorn fought with the desperate fury of someone whose life's work was crumbling around him. Shadow constructs materialized from his will, twisted parodies of wolves and humans, all teeth and claws and hungry void. But the Trinity fought as one organism. Amara's power carved paths through enemy ranks. Layla's light restored what corruption had claimed. Kale's bonds held them together when forces tried to tear them apart. You cannot win! Thorn's voice cracked with rage and disbelief. I have planned for centuries. Plans change, Amara said simply. Their combined power struck him like divine judgment, not to destroy, but to transform. Silver fire burned away his accumulated corruption. Healing light restored his original nature. Golden bonds anchored the change in permanent reality. When the light faded, only a confused old man remained, blinking in the dawn sunlight with eyes that held no memory of the monster he'd become. Where am I? He whispered. Amara felt no satisfaction in victory, only profound sadness for the corruption that had claimed someone who might once have been good. The real enemy had never been Thorn. It had been the darkness that whispered of power without consequence, evolution without compassion. And that darkness lived in every heart, waiting for the right moment to grow. But today, love had proven stronger than fear. Today, the Trinity had chosen a different path.
Chapter 23. Falling Action. In the aftermath of Thorn's defeat, Kale stood with his pack as they witnessed the dawn of a new era. The corruption is gone, Joran reported, his weathered face bright with wonder. Every trace of dark magic. It's just gone. Around them, the pack lands were transforming. Where Layla walked, silver wolf flowers bloomed in perfect spirals. Where Amara's power touched the earth, Strength flowed into weakened soil. Where Kale's bonds connected them all, harmony replaced discord. "What happens now?" Marcus asked, the young warrior's eyes wide with awe and uncertainty. Kale looked at his people, his family, and felt something he hadn't experienced in years. "Peace. Now we rebuild," he said simply. "But not as we were, as we choose to become." Lyra approached from the edge of the clearing, her winter storm eyes holding something Kale had never seen there before: respect. "You surprised me," she admitted. "I thought power would corrupt you as it did him." She gestured toward where Thorn sat under careful guard, still confused but no longer dangerous. "Power doesn't corrupt," Amara said, moving to stand beside Kale. "Fear of losing it does." The truth of those words resonated through the gathered pack. They'd seen what happened when someone tried to control everything, and they'd chosen a different path. The Trinity bond. Layla approached cautiously, still glowing with gentle healing light. "How does it work exactly?" Kale felt the connection pulse between them, not the forced, artificial bond of the corrupted marking, but something that felt as natural as breathing. Three souls choosing to intertwine, not because prophecy demanded it, but because their hearts recognized home. "Together, we're stronger than any of us could be alone," he said, "but apart, we're still complete." It was a new kind of mate bond, one that didn't diminish any of them but enhanced all three. Romantic love between him and Amara, sisterly devotion between the women, and deep friendship anchoring the trio in trust and mutual respect. "The other packs will want to understand what happened here," Joran pointed out. "News travels fast in our world." "Let them come," Amara replied, and silver light danced playfully around her fingers. "We'll show them what's possible when we choose cooperation over domination." Kale nodded, feeling the weight of leadership settling back onto his shoulders. But lighter now, shared among three instead of carried alone. The war was over, the corruption cleansed, the prophecy fulfilled in ways none of them had imagined. But as he looked out over his transforming packlands, Kyle couldn't shake the feeling that this ending was really a beginning, because the supernatural world was vast and there were others out there who might need what the Trinity could offer. Hope, healing. The radical idea that power shared was power multiplied. The real adventure was just beginning. Chapter 24. Months later, Amara stood on the balcony of their rebuilt pack house, watching the sun set over lands that had become something unprecedented in werewolf history. The Trinity Pack. Below, children who'd been born after the corruption's cleansing played games that sparkled with harmless magic. Healers worked alongside warriors in training sessions that emphasized protection over aggression, and everywhere, silver wolf flowers bloomed as symbols of hope reborn. "Deep thoughts?" Kale appeared beside her, his presence still sending delightful shivers down her spine. "Happy thoughts?" she corrected, leaning into his warmth. Their relationship had evolved beyond the desperate passion of crisis into something deeper, richer. Love seasoned with friendship, desire tempered with respect, power shared rather than contested. Layla's proposal went well, he reported with a grin. Amara laughed, remembering her sister's nervous excitement that morning. "Joran's been carrying that ring around for weeks. I thought he'd never find the courage to ask." It felt right. The gentle healer and the loyal warrior, finding love in the aftermath of survival. Another kind of bond, different from the Trinity but no less meaningful. Speaking of proposals, Kyle's voice carried a note that made her turn to face him fully. He was holding a small velvet box, his amber eyes bright with nervous hope. "Kyle, I know we're already bonded," he said quickly. "The Trinity connection, the mate bond, all of it. But I want to choose you again, every day, in every way that matters." Her heart stopped. "Are you?" "Amara Ashwood, Alpha Queen, pain in my ass, love of my life." He dropped to one knee, and the sight of her powerful alpha kneeling before her made tears spring to her eyes. "Will you marry me?" The ring was perfect. 3 stones representing their trinity bond, set in silver that matched her power's radiance. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes!" As he slipped the ring onto her finger, silver light and golden energy danced together in celebration. Somewhere in the pack house, Layla squealed with joy, having felt their happiness through the trinity bond. "Mrs. Blackwood," Cale murmured against her lips as he stood and drew her close. "Alpha Blackwood to you," she corrected with mock severity. His laugh was rich and warm and full of promise. "Always." From their balcony they could see the future spreading before them, a pack unified by choice rather than fear, a world slowly healing from centuries of old wounds, and 3 hearts beating in perfect harmony. The prophecy had spoken of salvation or destruction. They'd chosen something better. They'd chosen to rewrite the rules entirely. And in the distance, where the last rays of sunlight touched the earth, new silver wolf flowers bloomed, endless symbols of hope, love, and the radical power of choosing light over darkness. The Alpha Queen had awakened. The Trinity was complete. And their story, it was just beginning.